Okay, so as promised, we're going to look at another law today, a little bit more in depth. This one isn't quite as long, so you will get a little bit of time to work on that fill-in-the-blank sheet. Although I might, depending on how much time we do have left, I might consider, keep in mind, like I said earlier, off my board they've erased it, but keep in mind that we're aiming for a test next Friday, and I'm away Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I'm going to try to cram as much Newton's law stuff as I can into the next few days. So let's begin. So I would suggest strongly you put those phones away, take your jacket off, open your mind to the wonders of Newton's third law, and let's begin. So Newton's first law says what? The one we did yesterday? This is a quick review. What does the one from yesterday say? Objects in motion stay in motion. Objects at rest stay at rest, right? You remember the old tablecloth thing, right? Those objects are supposed to stay at rest because there is no force acting on them. Okay, well, Newton's third law, does anyone remember what this one is? This is the old action-reaction one. Okay, so let's jump in a little bit deeper here. So a force is a push or pull that acts upon an object as a result of its interaction with another object. Forces result from interactions. As discussed in Lesson 2, some forces result from contact interactions, like the normal force, frictional force, tensional forces. Applied forces are all examples of contact forces. If I want to push on the binder, I have to actually touch the binder, right? That's a contact force. There are other forces that exist that are not contact forces. I'll give you an example. Someone has brought me a balloon. Actually, did you bring me a balloon? Just wandered in with you? Someone rubbed it on their hair and it was stuck to their pants. I don't know how it got here. Okay, so if I drop the balloon, how come it falls? Gravity. So that is a non-contact force. Carter, you need to stop talking to me and start listening to me. He's not giving you a mark. Okay, so that's a non-contact force. Other forces are the result of what we call action at a distance interactions. Gravitational, electrical, magnetic forces, right? A magnet does not need to be in contact for there to be contact. If I rub this balloon on my hair, I think this actually works. What do you think, Tia? Think it's going to work? I've never actually done this. Little science experiment. What do you think?
I don't know. Touch your stubble.
Hey?
Touch your stubble.
Yeah. It's a couple days old. I'm conditioned today, so. It's trying to. That was kind of cool. Who wants to rub it up there? No? So I'll clean it off right there. No? Oh. How come that works? Not magic. How come when Raphael rubs it on his head, why does it work? Well, he's transferring electrons. We're not really sure. It depends on the electronegativity, whether the electrons are going from balloon to head or head to balloon, right? But we're creating a charge on that balloon, and it's by induction. There's that force, right? Now, is there a contact force right now? There is, because it's a contact, right? But at some point when I got close, probably only like a half centimeter or so, that last little bit is when it would have actually pulled it in tight, right? Just like in your fridge door, when you close the fridge door, you guys do close the fridge door, right? That last little bit, did you know there's a magnet in the door so that it shuts properly, right? Okay, so that last little bit, it is action at a distance. According to Newton, whenever objects A and B interact with each other, they exert forces upon each other. When you sit in your chair, your body exerts a downward force on the chair, and the chair exerts an upward force on your body. You can all feel it right now. There are two forces resulting from this interaction, a force on the chair and a force on your body. Now, I'll also point out how many objects are we talking about? Two. Force on chair, force on you. Okay? And that's always the key part there that kids get wrong. These two forces are called action and reaction forces and are the subject of Newton's third law of motion. Formally stated, Newton's third law is For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And I'm going to say, for every action, can you change that? So it says, for every action force, there is an equal and opposite reaction force. And I want you to highlight equal and opposite because those are the key terms. Because as much as I say equal, you're not going to actually understand what I mean. And I'm going to trick you a few times today until you get it. The statement means that in every interaction, there is a pair of forces acting on the two interacting objects. The size of the force on the first object equals the size of the force on the second. Right there, it says equals. Equals. The direction of the force on the first object is opposite to the direction of the force on the second object. Forces always come in pairs, equal and opposite action-reaction force pairs. Okay, so some examples. A variety of action-reaction force pairs are evident in nature. Consider the propulsion of a fish through the water. A fish uses its fins to push the water backwards. But a push on the water will only serve to accelerate the water. Since forces result from mutual interactions, the water must also be pushing the fish forward, propelling the fish through the water. The size of the force in the water equals the size of the force in the fish. And the direction of the force in the water backwards is opposite the direction of the force on the fish forwards. For every action, there is an equal in size and opposite in direction reaction force. Action-reaction force pairs make it possible for fish to swim, and humans too. Consider the flying motion of birds. A bird flies by using its wings. The wings of a bird push air downwards. Since forces result from mutual interactions, the air must also be pushing the bird upwards. The size of the force in the air equals the size of the force in the bird, and the direction of the force in the air is opposite, always, the direction of the force in the bird, upwards. For every action, there is an equal in size and opposite in direction reaction. I've repeated myself a couple times. Consider the motion of a car on the way to school. Who came to school today? Oddly enough, not everyone's hand went up. Very odd, very odd. Consider the motion of a car on the way to school. A car is equipped with wheels, as you may be familiar with, that spin. As the wheels spin, they grip the road and push the road backwards. Since forces result from mutual interactions, the road must also be pushing the wheels forward. The size of the force in the road equals the size of the force in the wheels or car, and the direction of the force in the road backwards is opposite the direction of the force in the wheels forwards. And again, for every action, there is an equal in size and opposite in direction action or reaction. Action-reaction force pairs make it possible for the cars to move along a roadway surface. Okay, let's see if you actually get it. I don't have clickers for this. I don't know why. I'm sure I've done this on clickers. I can't find that. Why? We'll have to do it old style. Mrs. Geddick has something that she does, like with her phone or something. How does that work? Because that's pretty cool, eh? Is it better than the clickers, Jason? Or it's just different? Yeah, that's cool. Do you get feedback yourself that you got it right and wrong? No, you don't. You just got this paper, right? Yeah. Okay, so when driving down the road, a firefly or a mosquito, let's say mosquito because we live in Canada. I'll change that to mosquito. Strikes the windshield of a bus and makes a quite obvious mess in front of the face of the driver. This is a clear case of Newton's third law of motion. The mosquito hits the bus and the bus hits the firefly. Which of the two forces is greater? The force on the mosquito, the force on the bus. Think about it for a second while I write mosquito. Okay, so bus, maybe it should be dragonfly. They make nice messes, right? Which force, eh? I don't know. Which force is greater, the force on the firefly or the force on the bus? How many people say the firefly? Always going to scratch for a second. Now, he does this. How many people say the force on the bus? The force on the bus is greater? Sarah, go tell us what the right answer is. Why is it the same? Because Newton says that the action-reaction force is, what did I say 3 times? Equal. I said it 3 times. I even underlined it every time. Equal forces. Neither of those is correct. Equal. Wrong. Wrong. What is going on there? What is going on? I did somehow break it, didn't I? Equal. Okay, so how come then the bug gets schmucked and the bus just keeps on going? Because the bus is big. Exactly. Isn't the other law about F equals ma that big masses need big forces to cause accelerations, right? Exactly. Buses are huge, much bigger than mosquitoes or fireflies or dragonflies, right? Tiny forces, little teeny tiny forces on bugs schmuck them. How come? Because they're little teeny tiny. Buses need big forces to schmuck them, like running into trains. Okay? Equal, equal, equal. Here's a tip for you. The choice is always, the correct answer is always equal. Always. Okay. For years, space travel was believed to be impossible because there was nothing that rockets could push off of in space in order to provide the propulsion necessary to accelerate. This inability of a rocket to provide propulsion is because A, space is void of air, so the rockets have nothing to push off of. B, gravity is absent in space. C, space is void of air, and so there is no air resistance in space. Nonsense, rockets do accelerate in space and have been able to do so for a long time. Okay, let me reread this because this is confusing, right? For years, people believed that space travel was impossible because there was nothing that rockets could push off of in space in order to provide the propulsion necessary. How about I get a rocket as a demonstration? You've probably all seen it back here. Unfortunately, this year I wasn't able to take any great calls out because we use this for projectile motion. Okay, so you've all seen the videos of rockets, blasting off, right? And you see that big fire and smoke at the bottom there. Is it pushing on the ground? It's pushing on the table? Is that why it goes up? Because it's pushing on that table? Like if I'm wearing rollerblades, or if I'm out on the curling ice, and I push on something, I'm going to slide backwards, right? Because I pushed off. Is that what rockets do? To start? You're right, there is no land up there, right? But so then how does it keep going up here then? It pushes what? Is the rocket touching the ground? No, right? When I push off at the rink, right, I'm touching it, and then after I push, they push air through the turbine? Okay. So, answer A, is this an inability of a rocket to provide propulsion because space is void of air, so the rockets have nothing to push off? Who says A? Anyone? How about B, gravity is absent in space? How about C, space is void of air, and so there's no air resistance in space? So it's a few tentative half hands up so that they can put it down real quick in case they're wrong. Nonsense. Rockets do accelerate in space and have been able to do so for a long time. Who says D? Correct answer is D. Way to go, Wade. Hunter? What's happening is the rocket has the fuel inside. It's actually pushing on the molecules of fuel. They are being pushed out, and it's actually a conservation of momentum thing, right? There is no pushing on the ground. The ground just happens to be there. Right? They're pushing the gas out. The gas molecules push out, and the gas molecules push up on the rocket. Action, reaction. Okay? It is D. Many people are familiar with the fact that a rifle recoils when fired. Anybody hunting in the last couple weeks? Ask Colby about it? Uh-oh. So Colby's now familiar with the concept of recoil, I'm assuming. Okay. Well, Colby, let's look for the silver lining. You're gonna be able to explain it to everyone else. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. All right, anyways. Many people are familiar with the fact that a rifle recoils when fired. This recoil is a result of action-reaction force pairs. A gunpowder explosion creates hot gases that expand outward, allowing the rifle to push forward on the bullet, right? Gases push forward the bullet. Consistent with Newton's law of motion, the bullet pushes backwards upon the rifle. The acceleration of the recoiling rifle is greater than the acceleration of the bullet, smaller than the acceleration of the bullet, the same size as the acceleration of the bullet. Okay, let me just explain this here, right? So you got your gun. I'll draw a really bad one. There's the bullet, right? Rifle pushes, the gases push on the bullet. Bullet pushes back. Which one has a greater acceleration? The acceleration of the recoiling rifle is greater, smaller, or equal, the same size. How many people say the rifle has a greater acceleration? A. How many people say B, the rifle has a smaller acceleration? Open. 1, 2, 3. How many people say the same size? Because Mr. Bennett said the answer is always equal the same. And Mr. Bennett's pants are on fire. Because I didn't add the word, the forces are always equal, but the accelerations are not. The answer is B. B. How come? Same reason as the bus and the mosquito, right? The rifle is way bigger than the bullet. The forces are the same, but the accelerations are different because the masses are different. Big mass, small acceleration. Small acceleration, small mass, big acceleration, right? And I'll explain more on that in a bit. Nod and say, now I get it. Get it? Yeah? So which ones are always equal? Forces. The accelerations are quite often different because the masses are also different. Okay, in the top picture down below, this guy, his name is Kent Budget. I don't know if it's because he's not very strong or he can't deal with money. Is pulling upon a rope that is attached to a wall. In the bottom picture, Kent is pulling upon a rope that is attached to an elephant. In each case, the force scale reads 500 newtons. Kent is pulling. Okay, so let me get, where did these come from? Okay, in each case, the force scale reads 500 newtons. Kent is pulling A with more force when the rope is attached to the wall, B with more force when the rope is attached to the elephant, C the same force in each case. How many people say A, more force when the rope is attached to the wall? Anyone say A? Anyone say B, more force when the rope is attached to the elephant? Anyone say C, the same force in each case? Should be all of you. The same force. Equal and opposite, right? The scale actually measures the tension in the rope. The same force. That's good. Are there more, or is that it? That's it? That was fun for a while. Okay, now the horse cart problem. Not always my favorite thing to read. It's hard to explain. I am missing. Okay, let's talk about the horse and cart. Okay, so, everybody got this right here? The horse cart problem. A situation similar to the kick football is shown in the comic strip Horse Sense. Here we think of the horse as believing its pull on the cart will be cancelled by the opposite and equal pull by the cart on the horse, thus making acceleration impossible. This is a classic problem that stumps many college students. By thinking carefully, you can understand. So now go to the cartoon. Okay? This is not a funny cartoon. This is just a physics teacher that is also a pretty good drawer and likes to explain things with cartoons. Okay, so the old farmer says, "Giddy up, pull the cart so we can get going." And the horse, because it's a talking horse, says, for me to pull the cart would be a futile effort, be a waste of my time." Right? You see, if I pull on the cart will pull back on me. Is that true? That's true. By Newton's third law, the forces are equal and opposite, so they'll cancel out. A zero net force won't get us moving. Because if the forces are zero, if the net force is zero, things don't move, right? So the farmer thinks back to physics class with Mr. Bennett. Says acceleration of cars equal to F over m, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about the force exerted on you. I'm interested in the force you exert on the cart. You pull the cart, I guarantee it will move. The horse says, how can I move forward when the cart pulls back on me? Does the cart pull back on the horse? That's true. More thinking about physics. Farmer says, just push backward on the ground. By Newton's third law, the ground will push forward equally on you, and then I'll simply follow along. And now the horse is mad because he got outsmarted. After all, it's just a horse. Hard to explain, hard to understand. Let's go back to the reading. And I'm going to reread the first paragraph here. A situation similar to a kick football is shown in the counterfeit horse sense. Here we think of the horse as believing its pull on the cart will be cancelled by the opposite and equal pull by the cart on the horse, thus making acceleration impossible. This is a classic problem that stumps many college students. By thinking carefully, you can understand. So I've got my picture here. It's the same one you've got on the left. The horse cart problem can be looked at from 3 different points of view, or points of reference, that we talked about earlier. First, consider the point of view of the farmer, who is concerned with getting his cart, the cart system, to market. Then there's the point of view of the horse system, and finally there is the point of view of the horse and cart together, the horse-cart system. From the farmer's point of view, the only concern is with the force that is exerted on the cart system. The net force on the cart, divided by the mass of the cart, will produce a very real acceleration. The farmer doesn't care about the reaction on the horse. Does the horse pull on the cart? Absolutely. What's the net force on the cart? Like, let's say the force on the cart pulling forward is 100 newtons, right? What's the net force on the cart? 100 newtons. Does it move? Absolutely. There's a net force on the cart. Sure. How many do you need? How many are you going to take? You're only going to take them all, are you? Maybe. Not working? Guess so. Okay. Now, look at the horse system. It's true that the opposite reaction force by the cart on the horse restrains the horse. Without this force, the horse could freely gallop through the market. This force tends to hold the horse back. So how does the horse move forward? The horse moves forward by interacting with the ground. When the horse pushes backward on the ground simultaneously pushes forward on the horse. Now, here's the key part. If the horse pushes the ground with a greater force than it pulls on the cart, there will be a net force on the horse, and acceleration will occur. So if he pushes on the ground, say 300 newtons, and the cart pulls back with only 100, what's the net force on the horse? 200. Does the horse move forward? Absolutely. Okay? So because, even though the horse pulls on the cart with 100, and the cart pulls back on the horse with minus 100, even though those are balanced, those are on 2 separate objects. Okay? And the net force on the horse, if he pushes on the ground, would say 300, and that minus 100, he's got an F net of 200, and he goes forward. Now, you're not going to get this all in the first crack. You're probably sitting there going, I don't know what he's talking about. That's okay. I'm going to keep coming back to this stuff. Okay? It'll eventually sink in. It might be January. That's okay. Okay? All right, I'm going to go back now to where it says, now look at the horse system. It's true that the opposite reaction force by the cart on the horse restrains the horse. Without this force, the horse could freely gallop to the market. This force tends to hold the horse back. So how does the horse move forward? The horse moves forward by interacting with the ground. When the horse pushes backward on the ground simultaneously pushes forward on the horse. If the horse pushes the ground with a greater force than it pulls on the cart, there will be a net force on the horse, and acceleration occurs. When the cart is up to speed, when the cart is up to speed, the horse need only push against the ground with enough force to offset the friction between the cart wheels and the ground. How come the horse can pull less once he gets the cart up to speed? You're kind of on the right track. Because you got to get going first. You have to, what's the A word? Accelerate. You need a greater force to accelerate from rest. Once you've got it already moving, how much force do you need? Zero. Zero net force. Now, if it's friction, and there always is, you need enough to overcome friction. Do you need to overcome friction at the start? Yeah, because to get going, you need friction too. There's static friction. There's friction at the start. There's friction when you're already moving. The difference is at the start, you have to accelerate. By the way, this will be a test question. So those of you that have your phones out should be listening instead. You have to overcome friction at the start, and you have to accelerate. When you're already moving, Zoe, you only need to overcome friction. So where do you need the most force? At the start. Am I causing your brain to slow down? Are you okay? Is it leaking out your ears? Should we check and get a doctor in here? No? Okay, last paragraph. Finally, look at the horse cart system as a whole. From this viewpoint, the pull on the horse, on the cart, and the reaction of the cart on the horse are internal forces, but inside the system. Forces that act and react within the system. They contribute nothing to the acceleration of the horse cart system. They cancel out and can be neglected. To move across the ground, there must be an interaction between the horse cart system and the ground. For example, if your car is stalled, you can't get it moving by sitting inside and pushing on the dashboard. If you've ever been stuck in a snowbank, you have to get out of the car, don't you? Right? You must interact with the ground outside. You must get outside and make the ground push the car. The horse cart system is similar. It is the outside reaction by the ground that pushes the system. Okay? And again, I don't expect you all to get that entirely. If you want to take that home and reread it again and think about it, that wouldn't be a terrible idea. Okay, given the amount of time that I have left, you guys have done pretty well. I think I'm going to give you like a 2-minute mental break here because you deserved it. And I'm going to hand out some free body diagram stuff, but let's do that. That will help us in the future. Okay, let's talk about FBDs or free body diagrams. I think I have time to complete this period, and that will definitely give us some more time in class to do some problem solving and for me to be able to help. So, free body diagrams, otherwise known as FBDs, are simplified representations in a problem of an object, the body, and the force vectors acting on it. Okay, so the body is free because the diagram will show it without its surroundings, i.e. the body is free of its environment. This eliminates unnecessary information which might be given in a problem. So drawing an FBD, glad you guys enjoyed yourself back. Drawing an FBD basically removes all sort of clutter from the problem and sort of simplifies things, right? Let's take this figure to be a pictorial representation of a situation. We've got a sled on snow with horses pulling it. First, we represent the sled, the body in our problem, as a really simplified figure, a square resting on a flat surface. Now, there is some discussion. Mr. Smigowski and I disagree a little bit here. I like to draw the ground. He claims that the ground shouldn't be there because it's supposed to be free of its surroundings. So, we may encounter that in the future. That said, I'm drawing the ground. In this tutorial, we will review some of the main forces which you will encounter in physics and discuss their contribution to an FBD. So I'm going to give you some examples, and then you're going to do some. So the first force that we're going to investigate is that due to gravity, and we'll call it the gravitational force. We know that the acceleration due to gravity on Earth is approximately 9.8 meters per second squared. The force by Newton's second law is Fw is equal to mg. Why g? Because the acceleration is replaced by gravity. So over here on the right, you should have FMG is equal to FW, right? Do you have that? Okay, so when I draw free body diagrams, I call it simply FW, the weight force. It is force due to gravity. Some books will show FG for gravity. I use FW for weight, where G is the acceleration due to gravity and M is the mass of the carriage or sled. Let's add this to our diagram. Note that the force vector labeled FW, or sometimes FG, points downward, as this is the direction in which the gravitational force acts. Note also that this force is commonly called weight. This weight, mg, is different from our everyday use of the word weight, which is known in physics as mass. When I stand on the nerd scale, many of you have, and it says about 800 newtons, that is my gravitational force. Right? 800 newtons. It is a newton then. You didn't know that? It's a nerd scale. Normal force. Okay, now here's something that you may not have ever heard about. The normal force is one that prevents objects from falling into whatever it is they are sitting upon. It is always perpendicular to the surface with which an object is in contact. Why did I change my voice there? Because it's important. Did anyone highlight it? No? I'm looking for my highlighted thing here. Where's my tools on the side? It is always perpendicular to the surface with which an object is in contact. For example, if there's a crate on the floor, we say that the crate experiences a normal force exerted by the floor. And because of this force, the crate does not fall into the floor. The normal force in the crate points upward perpendicular to the floor. It's called the normal force because the word normal and perpendicular mean the same thing. So up here, we would also include Fn. Force. And then the subscript is the type of force. In this case, it's the normal force, Fn. Some books will label it like this. Rather than Fn, you might see it as F and then the upside down T, which of course in math means perpendicular. You guys know what perpendicular means? No, that's parallel. Perpendicular means 90 degrees. The normal force is always perpendicular to the surface with which a body is in contact. For a body on a sloping surface like a ramp, the normal force acting on the body is still perpendicular to the slope. So in this case, way down here, let me zoom in a bit. In this case, way down here at the bottom, my normal force is like that. Which way is gravity? Gravity is straight down. Right? Now up here, are these forces, Fw and Fn, are they equal and opposite? Are they balanced? Yes, they are. When coffee cups half full of water are sitting at a table, the force of gravity is down and the normal force is up, and the coffee cup stays at rest because the net force is 0. But objects on ramps, like so, are those forces balanced? They are not. And Colby, when forces are not balanced, what happens? What happens when forces aren't balanced? The forces must be balanced. How can I tell? It's not moving. How can the forces not be balanced? Friction's there. Which way is friction, Vinny, right now? Well, if this was frictionless, if this was like a sheet of glass, I guess, or ice, what would happen to the cup? It would slide right down, wouldn't it? So that means friction must be up the ramp. But the forces are balanced, right? But if I go higher lane, well, how come the paper fell off? Paper has less mass? Paper has less friction. Low. You really wanted me to get that go all the way off and bust it? Would have been. I'll have to remember that. That was totally ad-lib. I've never done that before, but I really was thirsty. Thanks, Cole, for getting me a drink, but I am totally doing that next time. What's that? No, I knew it wasn't going to slide. I just kept lifting until it stopped, and then, right? Actually, I was surprised I got that. I was kind of like, ooh, I thought I had to only lift a little bit before it started sliding. Okay, so here, is there a net force? Is there a net force greater than 0 here? There is. The F net is greater than 0. And it should slide down the ramp. How come it didn't? Because of friction. Right? Which direction would friction be here? I'm jumping ahead quite a bit with you. Okay, here's friction here. I jumped quite a ways ahead. Here's what you should have got. I've already done this. It says, let's add the normal force to our FBD and represent the normal force with the letter Fn. These ones here are equal and opposite. Here, the F net equals 0, right? Okay, related to the normal force is the frictional force. The two are related because they are both due to the fact that the body is in contact with the surface. Whereas the normal force was perpendicular to the surface, the frictional force is parallel. Friction is parallel, whereas the friction force is parallel to the surface. Furthermore, friction opposes motion, and so its vector always points away from the direction of movement. Now, friction is divided into two types. There's static and kinetic. They are represented by FF, force friction, with a further subscript S for static friction and a subscript K for kinetic. As its name suggests, static friction occurs when the body is not moving with respect to the surface. So when the cup was balanced there, it was because of static friction. Static means at rest. And once it starts sliding, then that's called kinetic friction. And kinetic friction is always less than static friction. On the other hand, kinetic friction occurs when the body is sliding over the surface. Of course, rolling objects experience friction as well. Rolling friction is way beyond high school physics. Friction is usually approximated as being proportional to the normal force. The proportionality constant is called the coefficient of static friction, and it's represented by this funny-looking symbol right there. Can you see that on your page? What does it look like to you? Say it again, Anna. What does it look like to you? I heard you say upside down something. Upside down pi? Okay. Well, it's actually a U with a tail on the front. Okay? It's a U with a tail on the front, and it's the Greek letter mu. It's the Greek letter equivalent of RM. Okay? Really weird thing when I was in Greece a few years back, I could read all the words because I know most of the Greek alphabet just because of my math background. I didn't know what the word meant. But any word that was translated from English, like if it was an English word that had been translated into Greek, I could read it because I knew what the letters were. It was kind of freaky, actually. Okay, we'll talk more about coefficient of friction in a bit. Okay, pushes and pulls. A force that may act on an object could be any physical push or pull. This could be caused by a person pushing a crate on the floor, a child pulling on a wagon, or in the case of example, a horse pulling on the carriage. We will label the applied push or pull with an FA, applied force, FA. I usually use uppercase. The A stands for applied force. Tension in an object results if the pulling force acts on its end, such as in a rope used to pull a boulder. If we say that our carriage is being pulled by a bar, by the horse at its front end, then we can add this force to our FBD. So what's happening here? Our weight force and our normal force are balanced. So in the vertical direction, the net force is 0, which means the acceleration is also 0. But horizontally this way, are the forces balanced? They are not. So there is a net force, which means that it is going to accelerate, right? See how the FA is bigger than the FF. So this one's going to accelerate to the right. So if I ask you this question, is this object moving? Remember I asked that before? Is that object moving? Remember before the answer was it depends on what it was already doing. But is that one moving? Are you with us? Is that object moving? The answer is yes, because there is an acceleration. So if there is an acceleration, if it was at rest, it's going to start moving. And if it was already moving, it's just going to move faster. Speed up. Bingo.
Like with the next one's in a force where you look at the curves and go off of that.
Well, generally, things that sit on tables. Most grade 11 is all things that are on surfaces. So the up-down is going to be balanced. When you get to grade 12, then the up-down don't get balanced. And we're talking about ramps and stuff. Okay, so here's an example. Let's do this one real quick because we're starting to run out of time here. The child next door wants to take his German Shepherd named Spot for a ride on a sled. He chases Spot, who's running away while dragging the sled behind him. What forces are acting on the sled? Okay, so they've already got the box there for you. Most of the time you can assume that dogs pull sleds on earth, which means there's going to be gravity. So it is down. So we're going to draw that down, FW. Does it matter how long you draw it? Technically, you should draw scale diagrams, but nobody does that in their right mind. So as long as it's a sketch, that's fine. Okay. Now, sleds exist on Earth, where they're on the ground, which means there's going to be a normal force, which acts upward. So we're going to do that one, Fn. Should those two arrows be equal length? They should. Should you get out a ruler and measure them? You can. As long as my naked eye, when I see it and look at it, if it looks equal to me, I'm good. Okay? I don't expect it to be perfect. The sled is being dragged on the ground, which we can take to another surface. The surface exerts a force on the sled, preventing it from falling into the ground. That's the normal force. Oh, right. Number 3, because the sled is in motion and the surface with which it is in contact is not frictionless, it didn't say anything about frictionless, there is kinetic friction. Now, normally, and that's a pun there, normally we assume objects moving to the right, just because we live in a left-to-right world. So we're going to draw our friction to the left. If it doesn't say so, assume it's going to the right. Now, is the dog or child pulling on this sled? Yes. So there's going to be an applied force, which is going to be this way. Now, is this one accelerating? We think so. We're not real sure. So it should be more. Right? Now, could that force be, rather than straight horizontal, could it be like at an angle like this? It could. And we're going to get into situations like that in a couple days. But for now, let's just deal with it being sideways. Okay, so all you got to do is draw free body diagrams. That's all you got to do. Okay, another one. Spot the German Shepherd is being walked by his best pal Dot, the Siamese cat. I have no idea who's making this stuff up. It's very weird. Actually, Dot is pulling Spot across the ice rink and disturbing the neighborhood hockey game. What are the forces acting on Spot? So again, it's on Earth. So we've got weight force. Because it's acting on ice, it's a surface, so we got a normal force. And as I pointed out to Tia, 99% of the time, the weight force and the normal force are going to be equal and balanced because things tend not to accelerate up or down so far until we get there. Now, ice rink is code word for low friction or zero friction. That's what it is. Okay, so sometimes you have to read those code words. So there is no friction. The push-pull force may be misleading. While it's true that Spot is being pulled along by Dot, this is not the force acting on Spot, because Dot is pulling on the rope, and it's the rope that's pulling on the dog. So instead of an applied force, it's really a tension force, FT. I don't care about that. Okay? We just know there's some force pulling on the dog. I'm okay with labeling that FA. I really don't see what the big deal is there. Right? Especially when we're trying to solve a numerical problem. Okay, 2 more, quickly. When climbing the Empire State Building, King Kong peeks into one of the corporate windows, sees a poster with Tarzan swinging from a vine. Our furry friend decides he'd much rather be swinging from vines instead of hanging outside skyscrapers. I just don't know where this stuff comes from. When King Kong is swinging from a vine, what forces are acting on him? Okay, so here's King Kong reduced to a box. It happens on Earth. We have to suspend our disbelief for a moment about biological systems and the size of animals, but still gravity. Is there a normal force? Why not, Sarah? He's not on the ground. He's hanging from a vine. So, but there is an upward force, but this time we would definitely label this one FT. It is a tension that is pulling him. Is there any friction? Not in contact with any surface. You could argue, if you wish, that there's a small amount of air resistance. If you thought about this swinging from left to right, you might say, well, Mr. Bennett, there's a little bit of friction force, a little bit of air resistance, but for the most part, it's negligible. So that would be it. Okay? So there's not always those four forces. What about in an elevator here? No, I think I lied a little bit earlier. Pants on fire again. Our furry friend King Kong has had enough of monkeying around and has returned to the Big Apple. Once again, he's up to his tricks with the Empire State Building, only this time he's taking the elevator. While he's riding to the top of the building at a constant speed. Is that important?
Probably.
Yes, because at a constant speed means that the net force is 0, which means that all of the forces must be equal or balanced. Is it happening on Earth? It sure is. Weight force. What's pushing them up? The elevator, the floor, and we would call that the normal force. Should the blue and red arrows be equal to each other? Yes, because it says constant speed, and they have to have a 0, right? So they have to be bigger than each other. What if at the start, like when King Kong gets into the ground floor, doesn't that elevator have to accelerate to get up to speed? Right? So what has to be more? The red or the blue at the start? The red. If the red is more, there's going to be a bigger force up, which is going to create a net force, which means there's going to be an acceleration path. Now, here's a future question for you. If I put a scale on the elevator, I put King Kong on, or just me, and I get in on the elevator to the ground floor and it accelerates up, what does the scale read now? It reads 800. What does it read when I'm accelerating up? Does it change?
No.
What do you think, Trent? Gravity's pulling harder. It knows I'm in an elevator, and so therefore it has to pull harder on me? Or is it just kind of like a fake kind of simulated thing? Not sure? This will all get explained in the next unit, by the way. I'm just sort of doing some foreshadowing. I'll be quiet. What you think about it? Okay. Whew, that's a lot of talking today. I apologize. Thank you for staying with me. You have 7 minutes. Okay? So you are to draw, I'm going to assign homework for the very first time. Ever. You guys are the first class I've ever, in 25 years, I've ever assigned homework for. No, Anna, I'm lying. You got, no, I'm not lying about that. I want you to do those 11 questions for tomorrow. Okay, you got a few minutes right now. If you read really quick, you can probably get all 11 done. And I know most of you have spare in 3A too. If you want to stick around for 5 minutes and get it done, you can do that. Okay, get those 11 free body diagrams done for tomorrow. This will help us next week when I'm away, and you guys need some more time with me. Give it.